Well, here we are on Monday. Is it afternoon? Yes, I think it is afternoon. How are you this afternoon,
yes,
Pat?
yes. Afternoon, Jude.
Are you well?
Yes, it's slightly more, what would you say, dampish and
Aye,
dark than it was this last 4, 5, 6, 7 days.
aye, more normal Irish summer now.
Yeah.
But it hasn't started raining there yet.
Oh, it was raining quite heavily last night and early this morning.
Oh, I saw the ground some rain, but I didn't hear any. And
Yeah,
there's been no rain today yet. So I'm not complaining. We got our money's worth out of August, I think.
absolutely.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful,
Uh,
wonderful. Okay, let's attack the day's events or the events of the moment. There's a lot of big stories sort of floating around, and I suppose the biggest one that has happened in the last few days is that regarding Salman Rushdie, who, as you
yeah,
know, wrote the Satanic Verses, fatwa on his head since 1987, I think it was, or
yeah,
89.
yeah,
And then somebody attacked him with a knife and damn near killed him, but I gather he's pulling around now, when he was
yeah,
appearing, ironically, at a meeting where he was going to talk about free speech.
yeah.
What's your own thoughts on this? He had a hideout for 10 years,
Yeah.
and then it was relaxing because for example, Bridget Jones's Diary,
Yeah.
he has a part, and it's a jokey part where they joke about whether he's a good writer or not.
Yeah.
And in Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is another show I love, they have him on and they're making a joke of the fatwa, and the
Yeah.
Larry David is caught up in the fatwa. So I was just thinking both those, the TV series and the movie, will be stopped in their tracks from now on. They couldn't really play that again, could they?
No, I don't think so. I haven't read it, Jude. I've got a copy of the Satanic
I
Verses
never
somewhere
read that.
behind me there.
Yeah.
And Jude, no, I think
Why did you not
thing.
read it, Pat? Pat, tell me, why did you not read it? I didn't read it either.
Jude, there's about 50 other books up there I
It
haven't
looks,
read.
well, I mean, we tend to read the things we think will be good. And
Uh,
I have a feeling that for me, that Satanic Verses would not be good, and B, it's so bloody big. I mean, I haven't got it. It'd take a half a lifetime to get through that.
Well, Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall's up there, and I keep saying I'm going to read that. And I started James Joyce's Ulysses once, and I got a part. What is there? About 800 pages or 700, whatever it is. And I think I got as far as page 10, and I said, right, it's either this or lose the worldly love. So I wanted to keep the worldly love, so I threw it away.
Anyway, let's go back to Salman Rushdie. Is he right? Is he entitled to free speech? And what he said, I gather he said stuff which mocked at Muhammad, and that was considered blasphemous, and that's why they wanted to kill him. So, what's your thoughts on that?
But Judy, here's the thing: Rushdie himself said what he said was not mocking; it was an observation type thing. Now, I don't know; I haven't read the book, so there's no point in me saying I know it. But the thing about it, I am reluctant to sort of say that Islamic fanatics, are entitled, that we shouldn't mock their religion, and if we do, that's disrespecting them. I am more towards the idea that, right, okay, freedom of speech, even with all its fault. I think, Jude, you're not entitled to ram down your throat or my throat your views. I don't think any Muslim, like if I say I believe in God, great. If I say I don't believe in God, great. I am entitled to my opinion. No, I am not some sort of apostate or whatever you want to call me by not. And I think there's too many Muslims ramming it down people's throats, or the extremist end of Muslim or Islamists. They're sort of saying like they're putting people to death.
That's true. That's true. But if we stick with Rushdie, you see, it's not that they're ramming down his throat. They're saying he has mocked Muhammad, which I think means God, or certainly is a revered figure.
Yeah.
He has mocked it. Now, I don't know whether he has or not, but let's assume that he did mock the Muhammad. Otherwise, I mean, it seems unbelievable that that he would not have meant to mock him, and they somehow interpret it as mocking. I suspect that he somewhere or another, maybe in a certain context, but he has mocked Muhammad. Now, do people have? I think you're faced with a question then. Mocking someone's religion or most dearly held beliefs is a nasty, bad thing to do, I believe.
Yeah.
No, whatever belief people have, they're entitled to it. And I really shouldn't be going around saying, what a laugh that is, wise up, you stupid, and so on, right?
Yeah.
So for decency's sake, you say people shouldn't do that. The question is, do you need to have a law in place?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're leaving it up to people. Maybe you need a law. It's like seatbelts, you have to have a law.
Yeah. Well, in the wake of the satanic verses, the guys, what's it, that Johnny Hebdo or something, remember the French magazine, the attack and that, you know, definitely not his name, where they killed, murdered 4 or 5 people in that office. The Japanese translator of satanic verses was murdered. Remember the Danish cartoon people? I think one of them was murdered as well. Dude, and just because I insult you doesn't give you the right to murder me. You know, I am saying I don't believe that the right of free speech is absolute, but I think if you're going to ask me to come down on one side or the other, I am on the side of free speech.
I would tend to agree with you, Pat. Although I suspect, I mean, I like you, I haven't read the book, but I find it hard to believe that the Muslim world would have made a mistake where Salman Rushdie didn't, in fact, mock Muhammad all the time, that he was, he was saying something completely different. But I suppose, you can't just put out a fatwa and order that somebody's killed simply because he doesn't agree with you or because he's mocked something you hold dear. Mind you, leave aside the question of attacking people physically and killing them for saying something. I do think there's a lot of intolerance among people in the sense that they think it's okay to mock things that others hold dear. I think that's a wrong thing.
I think that's wrong, and I think there should be there should be some sort of crime, in any civilized society that that these things are like, be it hate speech or be it intolerance or whatever the term you want to use. But Jude, like for instance, if I took exception to some. I don't want some Muslim woman walking down the street wearing a burqa. I am entitled to kill her, because I'm an extremist. That doesn't work either way. She's entitled to wear her burqa. Now, Jude,
are you allowed to mock her? Are you allowed to mock her like Boris Johnson did?
No, I don't think. I think that's intolerance. But Jude, here's the point. A lot of these people on the extremist end of Muslim are sort of saying it's. I remember a guy. Well, he said I think it was on Newsnight and BBC about 10 years ago. He says, we will use your democratic societies to destroy it because we can use the freedom the Jews have to destroy your democracies. So he says, and I said, what was he said? So our belief in Muhammad and belief in Islamic religion wasn't optional. You didn't have a choice. It wasn't a democracy. Now, Jude, that strikes me as total intolerance.
I would agree with that. Although I must say, I've heard people say there's a tendency people have to sort of go to another extreme. I've known people, Christians, who have said, these people who say what fools Christians are, what idiots they are, and say wise up on an imaginary friend in the sky. They said they tend to say, well, try that out with the Muslims. There's a certain feeling that that people go for soft targets, so to speak.
Yeah,
but neither case is disgusting. I mean, could people not live their lives and leave other people alone to live theirs?
Yeah, Jude, didn't we have our Spanish Inquisition of about 600 years ago? And I think the Muslims are going to have to go through that whole period and say, look, we believe this. It's our faith. We're going to live it. If you don't like it, that's your problem. You go live your life. But we'll get on, and they're going to have to learn to sort of say, we have no right to impose our views on you.
Yeah. I think that's fair enough. Okay. It's a big topic, but we'll push on for the moment because there's several others that are lined up here. Do you listen to podcasts, Pat?
Not a lot.
I mean, apart from this brilliant podcast.
Absolutely.
This isn't, strictly speaking, I don't think this is a podcast, I think this is a sort of a podcast with pictures. Because podcasts
sound only,
I see they're getting a bonus with us. You get to see your beautiful face, and even my reasonably okay face as well.
They must look lovely. They must think it's great to look at two pensioners. Great.
Okay, Anyway, this is about a podcast somebody sent me, a relative of mine actually, and it's from the Indo, and it's Fianna Sheehan, who I think is
I was listening to it this morning, yeah.
Is he the editor, Fianna Sheehan?
He was. I think he's now some sort of maybe managing editor or something. I'm not quite sure.
Well, he's the host of this podcast, and the guest he had on was Shannon, I think, Maloney, and they're talking about the kidnapping of Shergar, and they move around and they talk about that a lot of phone calls were coming in at the time from the IRA, and at one point they say, "Oh yeah, you're getting a call from the IRA at Free Dairy Corner or whatever," and have a laugh. Then now, what would your reaction be to that? Do you feel just a little bit uneasy with that, or do you think that's fair enough?
I think the whole Jude. I was listening to it this morning, and I don't know what to make of the whole thing. Like the whole Shergar story. Like there are certain iconic places. Former editor of the Derry Journal used to claim to me that when it came to coverage of troubles in Derry, the Bogside covered the whole city because an incident took place in the Bogside, and it was probably way up in Gallia or the Waterside or somewhere. But somebody using Free Dairy Corner, just say, "I'm ringing you from Free Dairy Corner." Throw that in an IRA call, and that the whole implication. That's what I expect from people in that part of the world. That's basically what's going on there. But I was listening to the whole story of Shergar, and it is fascinating. And your man, Shannon Maloney, I think he used to write for one of the papers, as far as I remember. I think he maybe writes for the Pen. But the bottom line is, the whole story of Shergar, apparently the horse was dead within a couple of hours after being kidnapped. The IRA were looking to raise money for, it was 1982, was it, or something? I can't remember when it was. Anyway, might have been even earlier. So the whole thing, those were turbulent times. Remember, there was Don Tidy and Tidy Harriman and all this. In fact, we're chatting about. There were kidnappings. They were looking for bank raids, and there were shootings. It was a really, real strange time.
Yeah. The Shergar story is a sort of a fascinating one because it was such a much loved and successful horse. And then if you add to that the thing that was in everybody's mind at the time, the IRA. Of course, there's no proof, as far as I know, there's no proof that the IRA actually did steal the horse. I think the assumption is that it was the IRA. But I think the man that sent me the podcast, I think the point he wanted to make was that, what you mentioned at the beginning, this sort of casual, Free Dairy Corner, haha, like Free Dairy Corner or Free Dairy means IRA.
Rebels.
And that's that kind of blanket thinking.
Subversives,
drives me wild.
Drives
me wild. And you get people who say, people have said to me, with reference to nothing, it was a guy who had an argument about an incident that happened on the road. It wasn't road rage, but road anger. And halfway through, he says, "You're all the same up there, the whole lot of you." I was in Dublin at the time. You're all the same. You're all tired of the one brush. That is that mightn't be often expressed exactly like that, but that's it's an undercurrent that's there a lot of the time with a lot of people, which is a terrible pity.
Let me tell you a story. That's a very quick one. I was working in RT, and one night a guy rang up and he says, "Hey, look, I'm fed up." This is in 1980. This guy rang up and he says, "I'm fed up listening to nothing but troubles in the north and northern accents." And then he heard me. He said, Jesus, I'm chanting another bollocks, am I now? Exact words, by the way. And I said, "Excuse me, I'm from Donegal." But anyway, Jude, that was the attitude, and remember the famous one, Eddie McAteer went to see Sean Lamass. Now, Sean Lamass, the famous so-called IRA guy, the great Republican, and apparently Eddie left, and when he came back up, he said to several of the Nationalist Party that basically Lamass's attitude to him was gone back over the border and a plague in both your houses. So, that's so once the Republic was set up and established and got it on its feet, there was a blind eye turned to those unfortunate nationalists left behind.
That's right. There's always been a sort of an elephant in the corner, if not in the middle of the room. This notion, actually left us behind. And Varadkar, whom we'll come to later, was the one who said the people in the north, the nationalists in the north, will never be left behind again.
We'll
see about that in a minute or two. let's talk very briefly about the fact that something I hadn't realized until you mentioned it, that today is the anniversary of the Omagh bomb. And, you know,
it's the 24th anniversary, Jude. I think I might have said to you it's the 30th. Somebody's fact, it's the 24th.
Well, in either case, it brings to mind a terrible, terrible event. Now, I want to say something about it, and I have been attacked for even saying this.
Yeah.
Omagh was a bungled operation.
Yeah.
I don't believe the real IRA wanted to blow up all those people.
Yeah.
And the reason I'd say that is two. One, a short time before then, I think it was Banbridge, they had an explosion. Yeah. Their aim was to cause as much destruction of property as possible, but not to take people's lives, because they knew, not because probably they were in love with people, but because they didn't want counterproduction or bad publicity. Yeah. So this was the worst possible publicity. And therefore, I would say, people say, oh, they murdered them. No, actually, it's not murder. I know people get mad when I say this, but it's not murder. If you're not intentionally killing somebody, it's manslaughter. Now, that's not to say you aren't a total scum for making the circumstances arrive where that can happen. But it's, you shouldn't be talking about things in those terms if they're not actually accurate.
But
terrible.
You will never sell that to most people involved or to the greater public, because
do they not believe in English?
By the way, you're technically 100% right, 100% right, absolutely. But the one simple thing, if you plant a bomb, whether you meant to do it, didn't mean to do it, you planted the bomb, therefore you're guilty. So therefore, that's
it's what you're guilty of, Pat.
Yeah. I accept totally what you explained. In fact, Claudia was a terrible. I talked to several IRA guys, and they said that was a disgrace, that it was bungled and so on. Apparently, one of the phone boxes wasn't working or something. And sure, the same on the Birmingham bombing as well. Yeah. But the point everybody will come back to is to say, technically, you probably, the last thing the real IRA wanted to do was put a bomb and kill the whole, destroyed the real IRA. They never recovered it and so on. And a lot of those guys, were I think, persona non grata and Republicans. But the bottom line, Jude, is you try to tell any Irish person or anybody else that they didn't mean to do it, they'll just say, look, you planted a bomb.
Yeah, well, I don't think they will. They'll say, of course they meant it. No time at all be saying, of course they meant it. Of course they wanted to kill them all. That's not actually true. But actually, behind that, there's another even more worrying thing. And, I read reports of this that say that the special branch knew that the bomb was on its way. Have you heard that story?
I don't think that's even up for dispute, Jude. I think.
My God. Why did they let it come in?
I presume what they thought they were going to do, they thought they were going to be clever and catch all these guys, and something went wrong. Like the old one, draw them into the trap and then catch them, and we've got them. But something, obviously, the intelligence, either A, somebody messed up, or they put the bomb in the wrong place, or somebody wasn't paying attention, or they took their eye off the ball. God knows, Jude. But in those days, remember like Blockgall and places like that and so on. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. But the claim has been made numerous times that the cops knew it was coming.
It's a tangled story, and it's a horrible story. It really is. Because I know that exact street. I made my first date with a girl on that very place, about 10 yards where the bomb went off. Used to get my hair cut about 5 yards from where it went off. Terrible.
What was Judas the single biggest atrocity of the Troubles? 29 people dead, and there were twins who were unborn. About 300. They started off originally and said about 150 people. Was well over 300 people injured, and some of them very life-changing injuries.
Yeah, and I think it pressures Sinn Féin into getting right behind the peace movement, which they signed up to, because they simply couldn't afford to show the slightest degree.
Not the first time Jerry Adams came out publicly after Omagh and condemned the bombing.
They had to, hadn't any choice, because it was so horrible.
By the way, wasn't the Good Friday Agreement? The Good Friday Agreement was signed by that stage. The Good Friday Agreement was only a couple of months earlier.
That's right. And then they had a daft bloody program on ITV, I think it was, in England, or maybe it was BBC, where they discussed, would it bring down the Good Friday Agreement? And it was they had a young woman taking phone calls and working out percentages of people who said, "Oh yes, it'll bring down the Good Friday Agreement. Oh no, it won't bring it." So as if it was a game show, which was pretty disgusting. Especially when I mentioned the fact that I was one of the people that was in the studio at the time. Anyway, okay. We were talking about Southern attitudes to the North. Well, here's a Southern attitude to the North for you. Leo Varadkar was at, and Helen McEntee, I think. What is she? The Minister for...
Minister for Justice.
Both were at commemoration for Michael Collins and Arthur Griffith. And this is just a couple of days ago. And in it, Varadkar says, as we all know, the name Sinn Féin was later used by those who never tried to understand the principles for which people like Griffith and Collins had given their lives, nor to follow them. And he ends by saying, both Griffith and Collins were pragmatic men, and neither believed there was no alternative to violence or war. Okay, what do you think, Pat?
I think that's Leo trying to claim some sort of ground with Collins and Griffiths and distance himself from modern day Sinn Féin, and I'm not so sure he succeeded very well. Michael Collins wasn't exactly known for his peaceful means. Let's get that clear. And Griffiths, I think it was Maud Gone. Some newspaper editor sort of defamed her, and your man horsewhipped him. So he wasn't exactly a pacifist either, Griffiths. But he was a deep intellectual thinker, and I think he came up with the name Sinn Féin and so on and so on. But your man Leo said that Griffiths met with unionists, and he had a broad vision of and all the rest, and he was a pragmatic man. Well, you could apply that to Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness if you want to go down
exactly,
that.
Exactly, Pat. The very thing I thought of. That to say that especially Martin McGuinness, as if he didn't try to understand and to meet with and to be pragmatic in terms of unionism is absurd. He spent his whole working life virtually in Stormont doing that very thing, and very often in situations where there was not being publicly mocked, but something clear enough to it. I always thought in terms of the tone Paisley took with him. But I mean, they're caught on that one. I once did have an interview with not Leo Varadkar, but Enda Kenny, and he was the Fine Gael leader and Taoiseach at the time. And in his office was this huge painting of Michael Collins in full battle gear. The chief of staff,
chief of staff,
it was. As you say, like, it wasn't exactly a man of peace. Of course, he wasn't. I mean, the things he did, the attacks he created, the wiping out of the Cairo gang of spies, the killing of IRB, is it? No, not IRB, but RIC men. I mean, he was a soldier. He was a man who believed in violence. And why in God's name does Leo Varadkar think that we're not going to be aware of that? Of course he was engaged in violence, because I would imagine he saw no alternative. And when there was an alternative, he took that. And then there were people who blamed him for doing it. But
Martin McGuinness, and sometimes I can verify a lot of what McGuinness said, because I talked to him that often and for that long, for 20 plus years. And I remember him very clearly, and he said it with other people, and so I'm not claiming any exclusive or anything like that, but he said, I don't intend leaving this for my children. We need to get this sorted out. But Martin wasn't going to put up with anything. But Martin had a broad. I never heard Martin coming out with a sectarian comment during the entire time I knew him. But he wasn't prepared to put up with bullshit either, and he wasn't prepared to live as a second-class citizen. What he wanted was fairness and equality. And, you can either agree or disagree. Michael Collins, I'd say Martin McGuinness and Michael Collins, if anybody wanted to do a DNA analysis on their political lives, the parallels are there.
Yeah. I mean, just let's look at the statement he said again. Both were pragmatic men, and neither believed there was no alternative to violence or war. Well, I mean, that just flies in the face of fact.
Of the evidence.
Fact. I mean, if they didn't believe that there was any alternative, if they didn't believe there was an alternative to war, well, how come we had the War of Independence?
Well, how come Collins didn't do the same as Daniel O'Connell and say, no, let's talk? Or why didn't he do the same as Gandhi? Why didn't he do the same as Martin Luther King? Take marches on the street and sort of say this is non-violent. Jude, the Cairo gang, they what do you call it? They took out the Cairo gang. Jude, remember he said this was we have to go down and dirty. Jude, they executed people in front of their families. They shot them on their beds. And Jude, I loved. I'm doing on my own family circle. My wife's not my immediate family now, but on my family circle. One time I got talking to this woman, and she said one of her relatives was in the old IRA, and she said her old relative said, "Oh, the old IRA wasn't like this." Jude, I can get you the books. See they tied people, an informer to a beach and let him drown, and so on. Sligo Hills, Jude, they shot whole families. This sort of thing. Oh, the old IRA were good guys, and the modern IRA, no, Jude, war is dirty.
Danny Morrison has a book called Good Old IRA. I think there's a new version of it out actually, and he lists some of the things that they did, and they're certainly every bit as bad as violent as was the IRA violence during the Troubles, or more recent Troubles. But I mean, nobody's saying that it was good that people were dying and being killed. But to say that one kind of violence of the IRA in those days was good and this one is bad, that's what Leo Varadkar. The first thing I thought of when I read that by Varadkar, I thought of Donald Trump. I thought of Boris Johnson saying something that patently isn't true.
Yeah.
And somehow people will accept that because they know, what I'm doing is getting a
if he's going to condemn, but here's the point now. If he's going to condemn Martin McGuinness and Gerry Adams, he should also be prepared to condemn Michael Collins and Dave Valera.
Yeah. But they would say that, that was legitimate. It had the will of the people behind it.
Martin McGuinness claimed, and it's not original either, and Gerry Adams claimed as well, that up until the Good Friday Agreement, Martin McGuinness claimed many times that in 1918, the people of Ireland, which is the last time the island as a whole voted, and Sinn Féin won the vote by a massive majority. That the will of the people was ignored, democracy was ignored. There was artificial partition introduced, and he said until all the people of Ireland could vote as one, and that didn't happen until the Good Friday Agreement, when there was a referendum north and south. And yet they're so determined. Maybe, you see, I suppose it springs out of the Troubles and the attitude the South took, which was to say everything north of the border is murder. And it's very hard after 30 years or whatever of saying that to somehow stand back a bit and say, well, actually, that's not actually right. I don't think anybody I've ever met likes violence. I don't think, but I'd love to. I keep saying this. I would love if Cork, Kerry, Waterford, Wexford, name 2 other counties you can think of, where suddenly, tomorrow morning, or sort of after the Second World War, the Germans had stayed there and introduced a partition, closed them off, had checkpoints at the border, demanded they introduce German in the schools, and frowned on playing Gaelic games and all that. How do you think Cork, Kerry, Waterford, Wexford would have the people down there would have applied? Would they have all just said, "Oh, this is grand, we'll live with this," or would the people start being subversive and start putting bombs near German military installments and shooting German officers? I would say yes.
Yeah, I think that's right. This notion that he also, one of the things he said, I think it was Leo said it too. He said that what Michael Collins had done was a wonderful man, and he took on a great, much superior force and brought them to the conference table. Well, that sounds terribly like something I remember about 30 years ago.
But you just think they both had broad and inclusive vision. Jesus, I don't know, Jude. Like Michael Collins, and I have a book up there too about him. If you want to read, Jude, Michael Collins was a pragmatic man in the sense that he used violence when he needed to, and then when he got an option, like which any sane person would do.
That's exactly right, Pat. Exactly right. You got it there. Anybody who say, I mean, even if it was just for reasons of self-preservation. You're not going to go out and start shooting at people because somebody might shoot you. And I think that's something to keep in mind as well. that all of those who didn't engage in violence in different stages of our history weren't necessarily doing it because they objected to the taking of human life. I think many of them, I'd be amazed if it wasn't the case, many of them did it because they didn't want their human life to be taken.
Yeah, well, you know, in regard to that famous Fintan O'Toole article of last week, where he claimed that he was responding to Michelle O'Neill's, the people back then saw no alternative. One of the things he sort of, a certain person, a former broadcaster, got involved in myself and him in a debate where he said, well, okay, some people in the North decided violence was okay, but others didn't. But I would love to know how many of those who decided not to get involved in violence simply did so out of self-preservation.
Exactly. Well, let me make a rough guess, Pat. 90%, I would say, and I would say about 90%, and I think that even it might be generous. This notion, I would say a man like John Hume, I would hand it to Hume in terms of the sort of constancy of his vision of pacifism. And there are others as well in the SDLP as well. But don't give me this stuff about I didn't engage in violence and I'm a wonderful good boy. That's absolute nonsense.
By the way, it's like saying one point. Sorry for cutting it, but one point I would like to make, and I'm sure I never met one nationalist that loved Northern Ireland. Not one.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah, it was such a good place. Okay. Let's move on to a very nuanced piece in the Irish Times. This is our last piece now, and it's by Una Mullally.
Yeah,
and she talks about anger and hope. Do you want to elaborate on it, Pat? Or
I think she was she said, I think, Judah, now I'm paraphrasing here. She referenced Mary Lou McDonald's speech in America or Australia, which in fact she was. By the way, Una Mullally's breaking ranks with the Irish Times. She was actually quite positive about Sinn Féin, which is I'm sure she'll get chided for. But anyway, basically
she could lose her job.
But anyway, she said Mary Lou used that hope and anger thing. She said to them, the people who had emigrated to Australia, we're proud of you, and so on. And she said, and we hope that you'll come back someday. But the anger was that you've had to come here in the first place, that Ireland has failed you. And she said it's an old sort of strategy that Obama used and all that. But it's true, But Mary Lou was basically saying, I want you people to come back and live in a better Ireland than the one we existed, and help us, Sinn Féin. It was pure party politics, of course it was.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Do you think? Well, you see, Una Mullally seemed to be saying it wasn't just a question that Sinn Féin were in opposition in poetry, and when they got into power, if they got into power, that they'd have to govern in prose. In other words, they'd just be like another party.
Yeah.
I would say that she was pretty definitely saying they would not be just another party. I got the impression from her that something quite new would arrive if Sinn Féin got into power. Is that how you interpreted it?
No, Jude, I didn't take that out of it. But Jay, hold on, Jude. I sincerely hope you're right. I really, because here's the thing, and I've met numerous people in the Republic in recent times. They are so fed up with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. It's bumblebee and bumblebomb sort of thing. What they want is something different. And if Sinn Féin goes in and just simply follows the same policies of the two old parties, it's going to be a disaster. Sinn Féin has to come in with something, what would you say, radical. They're going to have to address a lot of the issues. Jude, there's so many things, like the housing situation in this country, if you're poor, is a disaster. The health situation, if you're poor, is a disaster. A million people on, and Jude, a lot of the whole thing about now, if you're bright and you're leaving secondary school and mommy and daddy can't afford, your chances of getting a proper third level education are diminishing by the week.
Yeah. So there certainly is scope for them to do something different. Of course, it's true that many parties govern in poetry and then, they campaign in poetry and govern in prose because they're faced with the realities. But it's also true that there are parties that come into power and do things that really change things. For example, the one that comes to mind immediately is the Labour government in England, who brought in the NHS, which was astonishing at the time. I mean, astonishing. I mean, in America, they're still arguing about the very notion of the government being involved in medical things. So it is possible to be bold and actually make a real difference in people's lives. I would say Sinn Féin, except they're a lot stupider than I think they are, they would know that people will be watching to see, are they going to fall into this trap? Are they going to just really be another version of Fine Gael?
By the way, the other thing as well, there's sort of a lot of I see a lot of the columnists and the establishment saying, "Oh, they're Marxists and they'll destroy our economy." All the rest of, you know, the old usual. But as Pierce Doherty has pointed out, each and every time, every policy they have put forward has been costed by the Department of Finance, and they're realistic.
Good. Okay, Pat, have any weather forecast before we go?
Well, Jude, I look out and it looks like it's starting to rain. So, by the way, our Donegal farmers will be delighted because it's.
Of course they will, but they'll be flooding because the ground's so. I'll let you out now with a song. Remember a song from our young days, Pat? The day that the rains came down.
You're a lot older than me. I don't remember that one.
You don't recognize it? Maybe it's the way I sing it. Okay, Pat.
All the best, Jude.
Okay.
Cheers. Good luck, Jude. Bye.